Police officers of Reddit, who's the smartest criminal you've ever encountered? Most of them are really stupid, so this guy isn't a criminal mastermind, but here goes. He wanted to rob a jeweler's on our city's main street. So he found out the flat beside the jeweler's was empty, and he hid there. For 2 weeks he triggered the alarm on purpose several times a night. Massive headache for the police and the business. We turned up to see nothing there, nothing on cameras. Thought it was just a fluke, so the jewelers turned off the alarm system and said they'd wait until the morning to get a new one installed, or that one rewired, because something wasn't right. As soon as he heard that, and the police leaving, he tore down the wall. Had already been working on this apparently, and robbed the place taking his sweet time. Escaped without anyone noticing anything for hours, until the jewelers came back in the morning. Then he tried to resell something he stole which had a serial number on it and got caught. So not that smart after all. Good effort though. He did all the hard work pretty well. AIDK, the hardest part about stealing high dollar goods is selling the merch. Edit. Of course my top comment is about criminal activity. Thanks Reddit. Yep, and unless you're lucky or find someone stupid enough to buy stolen goods for full retail price, you're going to be fencing them at a heavy discount. A friend of my brother moved to Israel where for a period of time it was / acceptable to drive with an American driver's license. He was pulled over for speeding, and when asked for his license, gave the officer his Costco card. Costco is a membership-based retail warehouse in the US and a few other countries. The exchange apparently went something like this. Officer, Costco? What is Costco? Friend, it's the state I'm from. Officer, that sounds made up. Friend, there are lots of states you probably haven't heard of. Have you heard of Arkansas? How about Idaho? Officer, I guess not. Friend, well, I'm from the small state of Costco. The officer didn't have a response and wound up writing the ticket to someone with a Costco driver's license. Friend framed the ticket and still has it hanging on his wall. Reminds me of a family friend of mine. Very funny Australian with an absolutely horrendous Boggan accent. Well, late 80s, he's driving through Texas and runs a red light, and is immediately pulled over by a 250-pound Texan police officer with an equally horrendous accent. The way the story goes, this man is obviously not the brightest chapter. So our friend, when asked about running the red light, gets very apologetic, and explains that he gets easily confused, because in Australia you know how things are veer down there, red means go, and green means stop. The cop actually let this man go with a warning, I did not know that. Well, in America, red means stop, so don't make this mistake again. Well, there was this one guy, we'll call him Jack. Now, Jack stole stuff, but also involved a lot of people. One time, he was planning to steal a whole bunch of cars, all luxury cars. So what he did was he got his people to call 911, etc. from all different places and countries to tell them that car theft was taking place in multiple places. Oh, he also only used a few people each time, so it was different voices, people, locations, etc. So the police went each time until he actually did the crime. Then no one came. He was never caught. When the owner of those cars came, the police didn't believe him. 10/10ths genius right there. He sort of used the boy who cried wolf story in real life to his advantage. The damn wolf learned to cry wolf. The story goes like this. A homeowner walks out one morning to drive to work, only to find his car missing. He reports the car stolen to police. A few days later, his car is sitting back in front of his house. When he gets inside, he finds a note. It was an apology that said the thief was in dire need of quick transportation, and so he borrowed the first car he found with the keys inside. The writer noticed the sticker on the car for the local sports team, and just so there were no hard feelings, he left 4 tickets to an upcoming game in the glove box for the homeowner and his family. So the homeowner and his family attend the game, but when they return home they find the house has been ransacked, and all items of value are gone. Edit. Some of you have noted this is an urban legend, which is true. It is also true that some urban legends have a basis in fact. In Europe right now there is a series of burglary of professional football players during game nights. Rob Gronkowski's house was burgled last year while he was playing in the Super Bowl. Rob Gronkowski? Don't mind if I do. There was a guy with over 50 speeding charges, with the name Pro Jazdy. He was in a different car, with a different disguise every single time. Eventually, after the government set up a special task force to take down this guy, they realized that Pro Jazdy means driver's license in Polish. Clarification: it was 50 different people. The police just wrote down their name as Pro Jazdy every time someone with a Polish driver's license was caught speeding. It is very similar to Phantom of Heilbronn. German police were looking for a serial killer who had left DNA traces at over 40 crime scenes all over Europe, only to find that the DNA belonged to a woman who worked at the factory that made the cotton swabs used for collecting DNA samples. Jesus Christ, that would be so deflating to be working that case and come to that conclusion. There's a small tourist town where I grew up that is divided in half by a big river. The only way between the two sides is over a long bridge, unless you go all the way around another mountain pass. These guys called in, like, 2 to 3 bomb threats to a posh hotel on one side of the bridge. I think they even left some dummy packages. All the police went across the bridge to do crowd control, etc., etc. The guys then called in a bomb threat on the bridge and started robbing stuff on the other side. The police couldn't be positive the bomb threat was real or not, and hesitated long enough to give the thieves a head start. I first heard this story about 10 years ago, in Banff, Alberta. Never bothered to look up what was real versus what is invented. I think this is pretty close. But as my father used to say, you can't let truth get in the way of a good story. Asterisk asterisk wow, 24k upvotes? Thanks folks. If it was my town, I'd put police stations on both sides. But that would probably cost more money than they have. Here's one. I knew this guy back in the early 80s. Let's call him Jim. Well, he really wanted this high-powered superbike, but he knew he couldn't ever afford it. So what he did was to take drive to London and scout it about for a few days until he found that particular model parked outside a house. He goes back that night with a slidder hammer, pulls the lock, and steals the bike. He gets it home, puts it in his garage, and completely strips it, so that the only thing left is the frame and the bottom half of the engine, which he drags into the weeds at the bottom of his garden. Then he pours fuel over it and burns it a bit. A few weeks pass, and weeds have started growing over it. It's at that point he calls the cops and reports that someone had dumped a bike frame in his garden. The cops show up, and he explains that he'd just got back from being away and found it. The cops take the frame and note down high name and address. A few days later, the cops call him and say that the bike had been stolen from London a month or so ago, from the serial number on the bottom half of the engine and frame, and that the insurance company had classed the bike as a write-off and had told the cops to dispose of it. Now, because the frame was found in his garden and the insurance company didn't want it, the cops were duty-bound to ask him if he wanted to keep it, or if they should throw it. So he tells them that he'd always wanted to build a bike. He gets the frame back from them, repaints it, then puts it all back together, and re-registers it as a Q-Reg, stolen and recovered. I forgot to call him Jim, didn't I? Working in a home improvement store when younger. This guy came in, went to the snow blowers, took one and went to the return desk. Said he wanted to return it, but had no receipt. They told him you need a receipt, so he says, okay, I'll be back, and wheels it off to car through the front door. He did this a few times apparently. Couple places even helped him load it back into his car. Had a guy try that with the big expensive bedding sets at Sears back 20 years ago. He came up the escalator empty-handed, walked into the first aisle, and came out carrying the set. He said he wanted to return it. I said I needed a receipt, and when he asked why, I explained, well, sometimes we have issues with people coming up here, taking stuff off the shelves, and trying to return it. He got a bit squirrely, looked around kinda panicked, and left with it. On the way to the door, security started following him, so he threw it at them, and sprinted out the door. Probably someone who committed a crime I never solved. With that being said, I had a guy use a sledgehammer to smash his way through a wall at a Best Buy and steal a bunch of phones and cameras. He was smart enough to wear gloves and a face mask and not touch anything he didn't have to. Alarms didn't go off until he exited out the back door, which the alarm company gets after a minute or two and takes them like 3/4 minutes to call into us, giving him a good 5-minute head start, so he was probably a few miles away before we got dispatched to it. He clearly scoped out the area before doing his deed too. Smart dude. Edit. So part of the building was built into a hill, so the hole was on the backside of the building along the grade line, but when you're inside the building it was about 8 feet up, so it was easier for him to leave out a door. Also the wall section, where he broke through, was hollow cement block. The portion of the wall below that was poured concrete. I just keep thinking about Sledge from Rainbow Six Siege. Rainbox 6 fell on hard times, and Sledge turned to a life of crime, breaking into Greg's, and stealing anything warm or not nailed down. Thanks for watching. Smash that like button, and subscribe for more dank memes.